For today's episode, I decided to take a trip to the LA Zoo, where I was first greeted by some exotic pink flamingos that get their color from the pigments in their algae and brine shrimp diet. Next, I visited the reptiles and watched some really cute turtles paddling through the water, using their webbed feet to propel themselves, as they're great swimmers, spending most of their lives in the water. As much fun as it is to watch these turtles swim around, my main reason for today's visit was to spend some time with the primates, which includes over 200 species, and the one that I was most interested in seeing today was the gorilla, predominantly ground-dwelling great apes that inhabit the tropical forests of Africa. Gorillas are herbivores, meaning their diet consists of plants and foliage, yet they are extremely powerful, averaging about 5 feet in height, but are several times stronger than a human. That said, despite their enormous strength, gorillas seem to be afraid of certain reptiles, such as chameleons and caterpillars, and they also don't like water, and will cross streams only if they can do so without getting wet, and very much dislike the rain. Gorillas are gentle giants that display many emotions, such as laughter and sadness, and usually live in family groups, but can also live a solitary life alone, or in loose association with other male bachelors.
There, he leaned back. Sit there and lean back. There you go. Now you got it. Yeah.
This one's name is Hassani, meaning handsome in Swahili, and he exuded a cool confidence.
I'm sorry, the glass. We can't get him to clean the glass.
Yeah, it's a little clean.
This side is okay, but the other side's pretty dirty. They go and clean it, and before you know it, looks like this again. Very good. Yeah. We would say if you're a mature person.
He didn't seem intimidated by me at all, yet was well aware of my presence beside him.
He knows you're doing that, you know.
You know what I'm doing?
Yeah, he's very aware of what you're doing.
His feet look so hand-like.
Uh-huh.
Very majestic guy here. Bachelor, you say, huh?
Yeah. Like I say, he's really a nice guy.
Nice guy.
Yeah, he really is. He's like our senior guy. The others are all, the other two.
He's 27, you said?
Yeah. One of them isn't out today. Is his half-brother. They both have the same father but different mothers.
The largest of the great apes, gorillas are considered highly intelligent, with some in captivity having been taught sign language, with one example having a vocabulary of more than 1,000 signs and the ability to understand 2,000 words of spoken English.
Baby.
With a sign language vocabulary of more than 1,000 words and the ability to understand thousands more,
Coco love. Good.
Coco, the western lowland gorilla, was a scientific marvel and source of wonder for decades. Coco was born in captivity in 1971 at the San Francisco Zoo and began learning sign language at the age of 1 from Dr. Penny Patterson as part of a Stanford research project. She became a sensation back in 1978 as the subject of a National Geographic cover story. Over her lifetime, Coco also learned how to paint, play wind instruments, and loved watching movies.
That said, chimpanzees have been shown an ability to not only use simple tools, but are able to solve many kinds of problems posed to them by human trainers and experimenters. Not only have chimps demonstrated an ability to also learn sign language, but researchers have taught chimps to count, compute, and communicate using languages based on the display of tokens or pictorial symbols.
And finally from us here on the webcast today, a story that might cause some of you to question whether or not we human beings really are the smartest creatures here on planet Earth. Japanese researchers created an intelligence test that pitted humans against chimps. And in the end, we look like chumps. Here's Bill Blakemore.
First test. Can chimpanzees count from 1 to 9 in the right order in return for a peanut or other tasty reward? Yes, they can. Now, if you just flash the 9 numerals for a moment, then cover them, can a chimpanzee remember where each numeral was and still get the order they were in right? Yes, for another tasty treat. This chimp got this wrong once, but thought nothing of it and, undaunted, went right back to getting them all correct. Now, if you flash just some of the 9 numerals, then cover them, can a chimp A, remember where each was, and B, in the right order, even though some were missing? Yes. Slowing down not one bit. And note, chimps can also eat and memorize at the same time. Not only that, if right after the numerals are flashed, the chimpanzee is then distracted, say by some monkey business over to the right off camera, or perhaps by another good-looking chimpanzee, and then returns to it, no problem. Just keep the goodies coming. Now, can another primate species, the adult Homo sapien, do the same? Well, okay. And again? 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 One more try? Well, okay. But actually, chimpanzees did much better than humans in this flash and remember test, leaving the Japanese human researchers scratching their heads. One possible theory: chimpanzees care more than humans about peanuts. Bill Blakemore, ABC News.
The study from Japan speaks to the adaptive intelligence of the chimps, which in that particular memory demonstration surpasses the performance of the human test subject, and is counterintuitive if one goes by the assumption that there must be a linear progression from inferior to superior in regards to primate and human evolution, as each species expresses its intelligence differently and in accordance to the environment in which it evolved or adapted to, which is often changing. In other words, a fish is superior when it comes to surviving in the water. A bird is exceptional in terms of thriving during flight, and a monkey exceeds in its survival in the trees. All life forms possess a unique form of intelligence expressed in accordance to its environment, and the notion that humanity is currently at life's zenith, or even its own pinnacle, may be a hasty conclusion. Known for their distinctive red fur, orangutans are great apes native to the rainforests of Indonesia and Malaysia, and are the largest arboreal mammal, meaning they spend most of their time in the trees, with arms much longer than their legs, and grasping hands and feet with long curved fingers and toes. The Malay word orangutan means person of the forest, and while they live semi-solitary lives in the wild, it should be noted that orangutans are highly social and are among the most intelligent primates whose learning abilities have been studied extensively.
My name is Dr. Rob Shoemaker, and behind me is AZ. AZ is an adult male orangutan, and he's who I'm going to be working with in just a minute. We'll start with some questions that he should be able to answer very effectively. His job is to find that symbol on the screen. So once he understands the symbol with accuracy, I can present it to him with virtually any level of complexity. Good. He can also use photographs and drawings, and he can be exceedingly accurate. What I'm asking him to do today is not counting. I'm asking him to learn how to sequence the numbers. And so far, what we're seeing is a very nice progression where he's ruling out all those possibilities and is starting to do very, very well on the task. All of that is to say he's going in the right direction. Let's start with an example from the vocabulary. This is the symbol for apple. And you'll notice that it starts with a rectangle on the outside or the exterior, and all food symbols start with a rectangle. You notice there's a diagonal line going from corner to corner and a dot right in the center. That is the only symbol that will ever look that way, and that's the only name we'll ever have for apple. Now watch carefully, okay? I'm going to ask him to find the name for apple on his screen. Perfect. Good job. Good, Ace. That was exactly right. I'm going to show him a very complicated screen. Good. Very good.
The innate intelligence of many primates that have been studied is very apparent. But what isn't so clear is the alleged and assumed transition from a tree-dwelling primate into a bipedal one. The incumbent theory presented by mainstream academia is that roughly 60 million years ago, pro-simians took to the trees. Pro means before, simian means monkey or ape. So after the cataclysmic event that ended the age of the dinosaurs, a theoretical mammal called a prosimian, similar to a rodent, is said to have moved into what became trees and allegedly evolved into monkeys. Some monkeys then came down from the trees and began spending part of the time on the ground, evolving into apes, with chimps and gorillas stemming from a common ancestor about 10 million years ago. Then, as the theory goes, somewhere between 5 and 7 million years ago, as I was taught, apes allegedly transitioned into bipedal hominins, which then supposedly gave rise to humans, with some desperate studies recently claiming that early humans were still swinging from the trees 2 million years ago, which I find laughable. Almost all archaeological digs in Africa focus exclusively in the strata focusing on the time period hypothesized for this missing link, the theoretical specimen demonstrating a primate transition into bipedalism, but has remained elusive, especially for researchers whose paychecks do not depend on corporate or federally funded academic institutions. Of course, there have been many errors and fakes presented to the public, such as the Piltdown Man, which for the first half of the 20th century was prominently displayed in the British Museum and in scientific textbooks, turning out to be an ape's jaw, fraudulently bleached and then glued onto a human skull for close to 50 years, or the Nebraska Man, which was an imaginary missing link that turned out to be dreamed up from a pig's tooth. This article published by BBC is titled, "We Still Have Not Found the Missing Link Between Us and Apes," that not only admits that we haven't found anything that resembles the last common ancestor between humans and apes, labeled the missing link, but goes on to state that there isn't even agreement among anthropologists on what the last common ancestor might have looked like. Now, just last week, it turns out that a hominin specimen touted as humanity's earliest ancestor was not a hominin, and thus was not the earliest known human ancestor. In a paper published in Journal of Human Evolution, a team of researchers from France have found evidence that the Sahelanthropus chadensis, which mainstream anthropologists claimed walked upright between 6.8 and 7.2 million years ago, which is twice as long ago as the famous Lucy dated to about 3.2 million years ago, actually did not walk upright and thus was not a hominin, but instead an ape ancestor that walked on all fours like gorillas and other great apes. So it was not a hominin and was therefore not an early human ancestor. That said, we don't even have transitional forms between Australopithecus, such as Lucy, and the Homo genus, which includes bipedal hominins such as habilis, erectus, Denisovans, and Neanderthal, not to mention Cro-Magnon or modern humans. And yet the mainstream media and academia tries very hard to force obsolete paradigms to work, despite persistent and obvious gaps in the fossil record, which seem to be pushed to support a political agenda, like out of Africa theory, which involves claims that an ape-like foot with a big toe that sticks out to the angle like a thumb, obviously used for grabbing branches, was actually a bipedal hominin ancestor displayed in many museums. Not only do I have a problem with the simian anatomy that some anthropologists try to pass off as bipedal, meaning upright walking, nothing that walked upright like we do had all that fur. Unlike apes and monkeys, we sweat a lot, and there's an explanation for this, which has to do with how bipedal hominins hunted. People cannot outrun most animals, like a gazelle for example, which can reach speeds of up to 60 miles per hour in short bursts, but it cannot sustain that for hours. People, however, can run for long periods of time, and this is demonstrated in marathon runners, where sweating becomes a necessity to be able to cool off after running down animals right before plunging a weapon into its exhausted body. So these upright, bipedal, hairy specimen with hands as feet, allegedly almost human, are paleo art and created to push a political agenda, not a scientific one. All aspects of the out of Africa theory lacks empirical evidence, from how races came to be to the hominin origins coming from tree dwellers. No ancient origin myth or religion attributes our start to monkeys. Many of them in fact claim that apes evolved from us, where the common ancestor took to the trees after some sort of global cataclysm, and instead of the other way around. If this sounds counterintuitive to you, it's now being proposed by members of the scientific community, so it's worth taking a look for yourself, since the media has no incentive to report on such things. That said, the revolution in genomics since the sequencing of DNA from all races, including archaic hominin races, which is a fancy way of saying ancient people, has demonstrated that we are all made up of various species of people that had different blood types, were adapted to different environments, but that does not answer the pivotal question: if we did not come down from the trees, where did humanity come from? Turning to myth and folklore, we have stories of people dwelling in subterranean habitats coming to the surface, such as the Hopi Indian legends. And I have several videos on Inner Earth which explores if it's even possible. And of course, there's no shortage of ancient mythologies and religious stories of some sort of fallen angel or god coming down and mating with earthly or mortal women, from the Book of Enoch to the many stories of Zeus or some other god, and their offspring establishing new civilizations, which is how Atlantis allegedly started, not to mention Crete and the Minoan civilization with Zeus and Europa, the Phoenician princess where Europe gets its name. The genetic findings seem to make much more sense in terms of an advanced branch of humanity hybridizing with more primitive or less technologically advanced cousins, which might sound implausible to some, but at least starts to solve mysteries such as Rh-negative blood type, which modern traditional Darwinian anthropology has no solution for. Hybrid humans existed in prehistory. For example, Neanderthals and modern humans, or Cro-Magnon, interbred from 35,000 to about 28,000 years ago. Europeans have between 1 and 5% Neanderthal genetics, while the percentage is even greater in East Asians. Sub-Saharan Africans have a trace amount of Neanderthal DNA, even though no Neanderthal has ever been found in Sub-Saharan Africa. The reason is because after hybridization in Europe, hybridized Europeans entered into Africa and interbred with an archaic ghost species, which got its name because it's only been detected genetically in the DNA of people from sub-Saharan Africa and has not yet been identified in the fossil record. So modern Africans are a hybrid race of the ghost species, which I suspect is Homo erectus or another very archaic hominin, and Europeans who already had interbred with Neanderthal. In other words, there absolutely and conclusively was no out of Africa in the sense of sub-Saharan African people leaving Africa and magically mutating into Asians and then Caucasians. This obsolete hypothesis will go down in history as a bigger fraud than the Piltdown Man. That said, there's a significant difference between the terms anatomically modern or anatomically correct human and fully modern human. Modern humans do not appear in the fossil record until around 40,000 years ago. Anything that you hear about that's older than that, for example, 200,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago, or even 70,000 years ago, may be called anatomically correct, but it's not fully modern, which must exhibit certain characteristics in terms of behavior, tool technology, and other phenotype attributes, of which the most important is the chin, thought to come about by using the back molars to chew instead of the front canines, indicating an agricultural diet. And agriculture is the requisite for what we call civilization. Without agriculture, there's no pyramids, no megalithic structures, no armies, no metals, no seafaring empires, all of which come about via domesticated animals used in farming, and by one specimen, Cro-Magnon are our direct ancestors, meaning they were the first fully modern human in every sense of the word modern, meaning they had a larger cranial capacity than today's average. And it wasn't just about size of the skull, it was also the shape, as Neanderthal also had a high cubic centimeter cranial volume, but it was shaped differently. It was elongated. Only Cro-Magnon had a round skull like we have, with a forehead and a chin like we have, with no brow ridge or no big bulging, protruding eyebrow bone. And Cro-Magnon had an advanced toolkit and everything we attribute to advanced modern human. Any anthropologist that does not agree or understand what I just said should go ask their university for a refund, as their degree is not worth the woke paper it was printed on. My name is Robert Sepehr. I'm an anthropologist. My published work is available on Amazon and through all other major book outlets. If you'd like to support my work, you can do that through patreon.com. There should be a link in the description. Please subscribe for future updates. Leave your thoughts below. Have a wonderful weekend, and I hope to see you again soon.